Solving a problem may seem easy if the problem has a low number of variables. The more variables, the greater the problem is to solve. As we know it, humanity is facing an issue with COVID-19, where cities are at a standstill and countries are unable to work to their proper capacity. COVID-19 might seem a new virus to others, however, this is the second strain of the SARS virus. While we wait for conditions to get better, we do not have an effective vaccine for COVID-19. Vaccines are designed to put specific bacteria in your body, which will aim to help boost your immune system and your immune system's response to such foreign bodies. This way your body can adapt to any sort of bacteria and virus that the vaccine is made for without signs and symptoms of illness. There are 5 different types of vaccines. Live attenuated, which is the bacteria that's weakened. Inactive, which is the bacteria where the cells are inactivated, only to boost your immune system. Toxoid vaccine, which is aimed to treat such infections like tetanus. Subunit vaccine. This vaccine aims to trigger a response for conditions such as whooping cough. And conjugate vaccines. This vaccine treats specific areas that has a group or class of bacteria and viruses, such as strep throat. There's many purposes for different vaccines. They can stem the rate of infections by helping you overcome your infection, or they can simply help you to boost your immunity so you can actually try and avoid getting this infection later down the track. Each infection has its own unique rate of transmission. Scientifically, this is called an R-naught. This is the result of an equation which is designed to give scientists the idea of how contagious an infection is. The higher the number, the more infectious the disease is. After learning about all this information, why does it take so long to develop a vaccine? Well, let's take a look through history and what that has taught us. Polio. Polio has an R-naught of 5 to 7. The virus has been around since the dawn of time, infesting human food and water supplies from another human's waste. It reached its peak in late 1988 after a reported 350,000 cases after the virus was identified in 1908. Major reported outbreaks were first known in the USA and in Europe in the mid to late 18th century. Symptoms of polio can often be categorized by weakness of limbs that can last for a few days or even a few weeks. This was a time where other diseases such as cholera and typhoid ravaged through cities, causing a lot of people to get sick. One smart invention which really helped control diseases such as polio was from a British inventor by the name of Joseph Bazalgette. Bazalgette was a surveyor and engineer on the Metropolitan Board Works in London, England, where he came up with this brilliant idea of putting all the sewage underground after it was believed that a lot of people were getting sick from the foul odour caused by people throwing the sewage in the streets. This virus caused almost 15,000 Londoners to lose their life. Eventually Bazalgette got the green lights in the years to come after 1849 to put his project of putting the sewage underground into motion. This was a long time coming after there's many knockbacks Bazalgette had to face, such as the financial costs, burdens of labour, and many different issues. This ultimately would lead to a lowering of the mortality rate because of diseases such as cholera, typhoid, and polio, because of the sewage being off the streets. Many years later, in the 1950s, there was a vaccine for polio created by a scientist, Jonas Salk. For polio, there are 2 types of vaccine. Activated polio vaccine, which is injected into the arm, and the second vaccine is an attenuated vaccine, which is given orally. Tetanus. Tetanus has an R-naught of 0.3 to 0.8. Most of us have had one of these vaccines at one point in our life. Tetanus has well-known symptoms which have been recorded since the dawn of time, where records have stated the link between wounds and muscle spasms which have been fatal. Tetanus was first identified in 1884 by scientist Arthur Nicolaiah and properly identified in humans by Japanese scientist Kitasabu Shibazabaru. The bacteria lives in warm, damp climates such as drains, ponds, around the house, anywhere that can be damp in soil, It can also be found in organs of animals and humans, and also on metals, where you can actually identify tetanus as rust. The tetanus toxin stops the release of neurotransmitters such as GABA and glycine, which stops the activation of neurons. Inhibited neurons can lead to muscle spasms and spastic paralysis in only some of the minor cases. This virus has an incubation period of 3 to 21 days. A toxoid vaccine was released, which acts against the release of the toxic materials from the bacteria, which can help stop the spread of the tetanus bacteria after the patient has been injected with the vaccine. This vaccine is designed to stop the release of any toxic waste into the human body, which we all know by now has drastic effects. All this was done in time for World War II. The total amount of cases worldwide dropped from approximately 356,000 to 38,000 by 2017. There is no known cure for tetanus. However, if you get regular medical intervention such as getting the vaccine, this can stop any form of tetanus from spreading in your body.
Number 3. Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome.
Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome has an R0 currently of 0.3 to 0.8. The Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, also known as Camel Syndrome, was first reported in Saudi Arabia in 2012. It is believed to have started from the Egyptian tomb bats. Symptoms are very similar to what we know as COVID-19. Symptoms can include a dry cough, unusual amounts of sputum, inner cough, respiratory issues, difficulty breathing, muscle pains, joint aches, very similar to what we also know as the flu. The virus spread to various areas such as most of Europe, Scandinavia, Asia, and the Middle East. The spread of the MERS coronavirus was under control after it was realized practicing such hygiene procedures as washing your hands, cleaning your hands with soap and hand sanitizer, using other hygiene procedures such as putting on new gloves if you believe you've touched an infected surface, doing things like that, and wearing face masks if you're sick. Although there's no known cure for the MERS coronavirus, clean hygienic practices helped drop the amount of cases considerably. If there is a diagnosis of the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, treatments can include things like self-isolation, where you need to stay away from others to help stop the spread of the disease, so that way you can let the virus pass naturally. As mentioned, clean hygiene standards, medical intervention, and nutritional support such as cleaning up your diet, making sure you drink plenty of water. Nowadays, any issues with the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome is only confined to hospitals, where hospitals have the right measures to put in place if any symptoms arise. The World Health Organization considers any possible outbreaks of the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome as being currently low, as it is only confined to hospitals where hygiene standards are by far one of the best.
Number 4. Ebola virus.
Ebola currently has an R0 of 1.5 to 2.5. Ebola was first discovered in 1976 in the Democratic Republic of Congo in a town near the Ebola River. It is believed that the first outbreak occurred near the South Sudanese border in a village called Nzara. This is where it was believed that the first outbreak happened, where a storekeeper became unusually sick with pneumonia-like symptoms and passed away. This wasn't the only outbreak. A school headmaster returned from a trip from Yambuku, which is a town near the border of South Sudan and the Central African Republic, which is between the dates of the 12th and 22nd of August. It is believed that the school headmaster contracted the virus after he was in contact with someone that worked in the cotton fields, where the huts would often have bats hanging from the roofs. The school headmaster unfortunately passed away 2 weeks later. Symptoms of the Ebola virus can include symptoms such as getting a rash, fever, excessive sweating, severe and impaired kidney functions, as well as liver, and other symptoms such as severe anemia. The initial Ebola virus outbreak in 1976 was controlled by putting in measures such as placing countries and towns in isolation, such as limiting the amount of travel, using clean hygiene procedures such as washing hands, wearing face masks, and the routine wipe down of surfaces. The virus was still localized in Western Africa until the outbreaks of the 1990s and the 2000s, where the virus spread to Southeast Asia, USA, Europe, and parts of the Middle East. There's only one known vaccine against a single strain of the Ebola virus. As to this date, the Ebola virus and the filovirus family, which the Ebola virus belongs into, scientists have spent the past 20 years studying this family so they can understand on how to place measures of control against further outbreaks from this family of viruses.
Number 5. Rabies.
Rabies has an R0 of 2 to 5. We all have been told in life, look out for that dog, look out for that animal with slobber, because that is a sign of rabies. To some degree they are right, because what those people are referring to is that we might contract a disease that might cause us uncontrollable rage. Rabies was first discovered in 1885 by two French scientists by the names of Émile Roux and Louis Pasteur. The virus belongs to a family of viruses called lyssaviruses, which is a family of viruses which are known to cause uncontrollable rage and frenzies. There are early reports of the virus going back thousands of years, after historical documents referred to animals and humans acting erratically. It is a widely known fact that you can contract rabies after being bitten by a contaminated animal, natural exposure, and ingesting anything that's contaminated with rabies. Usual symptoms of rabies can appear within months. The more severe cases, rabies can appear within weeks. If you believe that you have been exposed to the rabies virus, it is important that you seek urgent medical attention, as symptoms can include seizures, paralysis and weakness, impaired neural functions, sensitivity to stimulus such as light, sound. To prevent rabies, it is important that you stay away from stray animals, wild animals. Stay away from mammals in general if you feel that you might be at risk. Bats are believed to be the main contributing host to the rabies virus, as outbreaks have come from areas where there are high bat populations. Any animal can play host to the rabies virus. There are two different types of rabies vaccine. The first vaccine comes from a donated human host. This is called immune globulin. This is where the human host has the correct antibodies which are injected into the patient on the day of the exposure. This is called day 0. The second vaccine has 4 doses, which are delivered over 14 days. The first dose is delivered on day 0. The second dose is delivered on day 3. The third dose is delivered on day 7. And the last and the fourth dose is delivered on day 14.
Number 6. HIV/AIDS.
HIV has an R0 of 2 to 5. Human immunodeficiency virus can be split up into 2 strains, known as HIV-1 and HIV-2. HIV-2 is the strain also known as AIDS. HIV-2 predominantly has an origin what's believed to be chimpanzees in Africa. AIDS is a progression of HIV, which has a higher toll on the human body because the symptoms of HIV worsen. The virus was first identified in the USA in 1981 after a cluster of cases where there's gay men and drug users were contracting issues such as having coloured lesions, rapid weight loss, and other symptoms such as swollen lymph nodes. At this stage, the virus had no name, so the media dubbed the virus GRID, which stands for Gay-Related Immune Disorder. 2 years later, in 1983, the virus was then called Human T Lymphotropic Virus by a French scientist, François Senoussi. At the same time in 1983, another scientist by the name of Luc Montagnier called the virus LAV, which is Lymphotropic Associated Virus. As soon as both scientists realized that they made the same discovery, the name that both scientists called the virus was then collectively agreed to be called HIV. HCLVs are very similar to a HIV virus, as both compromise the lymph nodes, quality of the bloods, which leads to a poor immune system. This virus can appear in someone's system after cross-contamination from contaminated surfaces such as needles, foods, unhygienic spaces, and having unprotected intercourse. HIV was only thought to be a virus that was specific to gays. However, people were soon to be proven wrong, after a lot of people that had unprotected sex and were a common drug user were found to have the virus as well as those in Africa that contracted the virus from what's believed to be chimpanzees.
Number 7. The SARS virus.
SARS has an R0 of 2 to 5. In November 2002, in the southern part of China in the region of Guangdong. This was believed to be where the first case of the SARS virus, when what is believed to be a civet cat, transmitted the virus onto a human, which is understood to be a farmer. With the farmer highly likely coming into contact with others, it is then understood that the farmer then passed the virus onto others, where there's this one case where a person went into the Sun Yat-sen hospital in the city of Guangzhou, where hospital staff were baffled because this person was not responding to conservative treatment, which would treat conditions such as pneumonia. Therefore, this is understood to be the epicenter of the SARS virus outbreak. 4 months later, in February 2003, a Chinese businessman by the name of Johnny Chen was traveling from Guangzhou and landed in Hanoi, Vietnam, then became ill and went to the French hospital of Hanoi, where he was treated by staff. The staff at the hospital were baffled at his condition as he was not responding to typical treatment that would treat acute respiratory issues. Staff at the hospital made a call to Italian doctor and epidemiologist Carlo Urbani, who was at the time residing in Cambodia, for help. An epidemiologist is a specialist that deals in a branch of medicine who focuses on the study of diseases and methods of control. Urbani flew to Hanoi, where he came to the conclusion that Chen displayed highly unusual flu-like symptoms. With Chen not responding to medicine, he came to the conclusion that Chen would be highly contagious. Then after that, the very first message to the World Health Organization was made. After this discovery, isolation and measures of control were immediately put in place, such as limiting the amount of people going in and out of hospitals. Patients in hospitals were being isolated. Staff were wearing protective gear such as gloves, face masks, as well as travel restrictions were severely limited in and out of Vietnam, which had a great effect on the population, as this meant that the virus was under control within a matter of weeks. Carlo Urbani unfortunately passed away from contracting the SARS virus a matter of weeks later, after helping other SARS patients on the 29th of March after an 18-day stint in ICU. The Italian doctor is notable for making a big contribution to the worldwide community, as his methods of control is what we use today. The Italian doctor's measures that he put in control in Vietnam led to the virus being under control in a matter of 5 weeks. The virus spread to all parts of the world, such as Europe, Asia, parts of Southeast Asia, and North America. The next month in April, a military physician who is notable for breaking the news of the Tiananmen Square massacre by the name of Jin Yangyong to world news organizations about what was really going on in China for how bad the SARS virus was, as the Chinese officials were claiming that there was only a handful of cases in each city, where the reality was there was 100 to 150 people taking up a lot of beds that were sick with this virus. To be diagnosed with the SARS virus, you need to display some of the following symptoms: a dry cough, heavy breathing, excessive phlegm in your lungs, a fever, high body temperature, and loose bowels. The incubation period for SARS is understood to be up to 14 days. In some severe cases, symptoms can get as bad as your lungs being as full as phlegm, where you really struggle to breathe, where you need to be placed on things like ventilators, given oxygen just to survive. On the 18th of May 2004, the World Health Organization announced the containment of SARS. A little less than a year later, on the 15th of May 2005, the World Health Organization then announced that the SARS virus had no new cases worldwide. At this stage, we have no known vaccine for the SARS virus. However, the World Health Organization recommends we follow the following steps to lower the risk that we have at contracting the virus. The World Health Organization recommends that we wash our hands with soap and water, as this ensures that we break through the fatty layer that the virus has in order to disperse the cell, therefore killing the virus. And also washing our hands regularly, wearing a face mask if we're sick, and seeking the appropriate medical attention if we believe that our symptoms are not getting any better. Please look out, and please help me out, because I want to help you guys out as well. That's why I'm here. So please subscribe, comment down below, and like my video. Would love to hear some ideas, some sources of creativity. I would love to hear any feedback you've got, anything you want to see, anything. Anyway guys, I will see you in the next video.